Hey, what's your problem? You have business problems? We have business solutions. Well, maybe.
Right.
Life is a fight.
It is.
In business, every day is a fight.
It kind of is.
So, hey, what's your problem?
Yes, thank you, John David Wells from the Wells Report. Always talking about him at the beginning and the top of these shows. Check him out, thewellsreport.com, and on Facebook. Fun guy to follow. Got a lot of interesting opinions, as usual. And yes, this is the What's Your Problem podcast, where we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals about the problems that they're having. It's always something, as they say. I am your host, Jim McCarthy, with JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com. Check us out and follow along at whatsyourproblempodcast.com. That's a fun site. And let us know anything else we need to be talking about, anybody I need to be reaching out to discover what their problems are. What's your problem? Do you have a problem? Let me know. Join in the conversation and all that fun stuff. Today, got an old friend coming in, another B&I-er. If you guys are familiar with B&I, check that out.
Was that a noun, B&I-er?
Yeah, B&I-er. Why not? Mr. Donovan Manley. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Hey, just watching the master work back there.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
It's like I'm at WKRP or something.
try my best, right? What we're doing today is we're talking about all things problems. Well, not problems, but Donovan's background. He is a 22-year Army veteran, right?
That is right.
And you're doing the fitness thing these days. You and I met back when we were pitching lighting for a place you were working at. I don't know if we want to name them.
Yeah, it's a foolish company that didn't take you up on it.
Right.
I later found out why
they
didn't do that.
Yeah, I remember meeting with the CFO, but that was a fun meeting. But we talked about that back then, and but you know, a fortuitous meeting in general. We had you join or visit B&I, and now you're an embedded member. You're on the leadership team and everything, the president of the chapter right now. So really kind of dove in, and now you're doing your own thing, which is kind of cool, man.
Yeah, once I left that company, when I retired, you know, I got recruited to go run a furniture factory down in Georgia.
Right.
And it was fun. You know, manufacturing was fun. I kind of enjoyed it, but you know, our grandkids were up here, and I promised them 2 years, almost to the day the moving truck was headed back home to Nashville. And so then they recruited me to run that that health club. And then when I left there, you know, I just didn't want to go work for anybody else. It just was.
I get it.
It was 2 strikes, and I didn't want a 3rd strike. And so I figured that I had some skills and some experiences that I could pass on, and I just
went from there.
Went out on my own, yeah.
Well, before we get anything else, we're going to do something that we call the Random 5.
Yeah.
5 completely random questions, kind of open up the carburetor, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense.
Just like pulling the choke or something?
Yeah, I guess, you know.
Is there anything carbureted anymore? Does that even exist?
Naturally aspirated? It's kind of, you know, it stretches the legs. We're going to stretch the legs right now. Get some creativity going. 5 random questions, completely random. First one. What's something you boycott but don't make a big deal of boycotting?
Boycott?
Yeah.
I don't know if I intentionally boycott anything. I just choose not to do things.
You just don't know what anything comes to mind at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I don't go to Broadway unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah, I can see that. Us being Nashville locals, it's like going to the Strip when you live in Vegas.
Yeah, people come to town, they're like, oh, what's your favorite place to go on Broadway? I'm like, nothing.
Nothing at all. Let's see. Question number 2. What common piece of advice or words of wisdom don't actually make much sense?
Oh, wow. Most of them.
Yeah.
Honestly. Failure's not an option. Like I've always just really disliked that saying. Mm-hmm. Failure is the default option, man. Like that's just the reality of it. If you're trying to change something, unless you take action, failure is what happens. And so it's the default. It's kind of like, you know, when your wheels are out of line, it's always pulling you in that direction. You're always being pulled towards it. So it's always an option. You just have to mitigate the possibility. It's the premise of this podcast. It's always
That's
something.
Right, yeah, right? Always something. Not really failure, but it's always a problem.
Yeah. And
right?
I mean, I get where they're going with it.
Yeah. But it's funny because to me, the whole concept of common sense is problematic because Well, it's common sense. No, it's not. Because what's common to you is not common to other people.
Yeah.
Question number 3. If you had to be stuck at one age forever, what age would you choose?
Ooh.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one because there's lots of good ones. Probably somewhere around 32.
Yeah?
Just because of what was going on. I mean, I was in my prime in the Army. I was I think I was an E7 at the time, a sergeant first class and drill sergeant of the year. I mean, lots of things were going good. And I was physically at my prime, but I hadn't broken myself yet.
Right.
Still had another 10 years before I had to rebuild a whole bunch of parts.
Well, I think we're on, let's see, question number 4. What's an example of a modern masterpiece?
A modern masterpiece.
Yeah.
I don't know. People have different opinions. I really like Hamilton. I like the musical Hamilton.
Yeah.
And because, number one, I'm a history buff, but mostly because I look at it and I think, especially if you see the one where it's the original cast.
Yeah.
Like just the amount of artistry and creativity it took to put all of that together just baffles me because I don't have that kind of creativity.
Well, you know what's funny about that play? Lin-Manuel Miranda is, kind of a rap hip hop artist. So they were able to fit more information into that play because of the rapid fire delivery of the words. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, I never actually thought about that.
Well, and I saw this, I don't know, it's an interview or documentary or something, I'm not sure, but he was talking about the kind of things you don't recognize is that each of the characters has his or her own hip hop style, but the sisters were in more of a Motown R&B style,
right?
And they had their own,
and some of them even rap,
had their own tempo and all that stuff. Yep. Just the creativity that goes into that. I don't have that kind of creativity.
I think we're on question number 5. I believe. I was in radio. I'm bad at math. What useless bit of information have you memorized and will probably never forget?
So many things. I feel like Cliff Clavin half the time when people are talking.
Sammy.
Well, actually. That's where I'm at.
Oscar from The Office.
All the time.
What comes to mind? Anything?
What comes to mind? Just, how many feet are in a mile? How many yards are in a mile?
Yeah. I know that. I think
totally
it's 5,680?
5,280.
5,280.
It's completely useless information. Right?
Well,
How many times are you going to measure out a mile by feet?
I got it off. I was off by 400 feet.
Yeah.
So I got the 80 part right and the 5,000. I know it's 5,000.
Yeah. But
mine is, what's a Mach? I think it's 770 miles an hour, I believe.
Ooh, yeah, that I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just chock full of useless information.
It happens. So getting into it, it's hard to believe that you have grandkids. And we've talked about this before because you're a young looking fella.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are a spring chicken.
I'll be 50 this weekend. And so some days I feel like it.
Right.
And other days I feel like a spring chicken. But yeah, we have 4 grandchildren. The oldest is 11.
Yeah.
And, grandchildren are fun, man.
I'm not there yet. I'm willing to bide my time.
Yeah.
So
there's no rush.
Yeah. So getting into the Army, we were kind of talking about this in the kitchen out there about engineers and things of that nature. Getting into what you were doing, you said that you were a master at, kind of like me, getting in and helping people run their own organizations, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've always had a couple of strengths and really only 2 things that I'm naturally good at. People follow me mainly because I care about them and helping them get better.
Right.
That's always been a focus. And then solving problems. You take all those talent, those talent finders and skills tests and all that stuff, and usually at the top is going to be either a love of learning, coaching, or problem solving, or a philomath, right? Taking different kinds of concepts and putting them together in unique ways. And it's just because I've spent a long time, I had to fight for an education, right? I didn't finish the 11th grade, joined the Army, and then started getting some college and eventually got a bachelor's degree, eventually got an executive MBA. And so learning was always part of my life. It just wasn't formal education in the early days. And so because I do that all the time, I just have all this useless information in my head. And fortunately, it comes out just at the right time where I can apply it to a problem. So improving the way things are done, building cultures within an organization has been something that I've just done kind of by accident. like I said, it's mostly just about caring about the people and there's all kinds of things. And I mean, I'm pretty open with folks, and I'm transparent about my own vulnerability and all that. And it builds trust. And so I really enjoyed a long history of a long career of building up organizations with, a couple of not as good experiences, but a whole lot of successes. And, that's kind of the average. That's the way it comes out.
Right. So you have experience doing that with a lot of different organizations. You mentioned something earlier in the kitchen, once again, culture building, which is a big priority of yours.
Yeah.
We're all going to build some sort of a culture, whether it's intentional or not.
Yeah.
I always say they're going to be good, bad, or indifferent. I'm assuming you're going to want to try and build a good culture.
Yeah.
Of some sort,
ideally,
right? Yeah. So what does that look like, though, for you? How do you begin doing that?
I think with a lot of things, just the label good or bad is it creates a challenge, right? So really, you're trying to create a culture that leads to solving the problem that your organization is supposed to solve, and that's a culture of trust and a culture of unified purpose.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always found to be important is you've got to get everybody behind a unifying purpose. And so in the military, it's easy to think, well, the unifying purpose is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Yeah, that's great. But on a day-to-day basis, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's got more to do with either supporting the person to your left and your right, or if you're in a unit that is supporting the flank, you've got to do your job so that they can do it. You've got to be good so nobody is, you're not letting anybody down. There's always some kind of unifying purpose there. And the lower you can get tiers of purpose, the better your organization is going to be.
Right.
So you think about a big company, and they've got the mission and purpose and mission and vision statement on the compliance board and outside the CEO's office.
But nobody knows what it means.
Nobody knows what it means.
Yeah.
And if you follow people in the organization around, you wouldn't be able to tell. And if you can't tell by following the people in the organization around, they don't have a unified purpose. It's just written on paper.
Yeah, because they don't practice it every day, because it's got to be a daily practice. The military, I'm going to say, I'll be bold enough to say right now that I think in the military, it's easier to establish a culture of some sort and get everybody behind a unifying purpose, because there's no other choice. You can't leave.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is true. I mean, I used to joke. People would say, "Oh, yeah, well, what if you just didn't show up to work?" I'm like, yeah, I'm legally obligated to show up to work or go to jail. So it's pretty easy motivation there to show up and do exercise. But the fact is, you do have a lot of authority over the lives of the people.
Yeah,
and that is that helps you as you're trying to build that culture and create that common purpose. But it also is a great responsibility,
right,
for you. And I think the one thing is they all know they have to be there, but they also know everybody else has got to be there, and they're counting on them.
Yeah.
And if you can get folks driving, and I was fortunate. My early years, I was a paratrooper, and so I was in the 82nd Airborne. I was in the 173rd Airborne. I mean, these are units where we all wanted to be there, and if you didn't, if you weren't up to snuff, you just got shipped to another unit, and that was fine. Right. So I was very fortunate to be surrounded by folks that were really driven.
Yeah.
And that created some direction for me that, coming from my not great childhood, I mean, that just created some structure and some direction for me. And I had that unifying purpose of helping make the people around me better.
Right.
But yeah, I would say in the military, it's a little easier, but there's also challenges, that you don't face in the civilian community either. As a commander, you're responsible for every part of their life. They don't pay their bills, it's your problem. Their car's broken down, it's your problem. I mean,
really?
Oh man. Yeah. It's
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. You got to take care of the whole soldier and the whole family.
Right.
And you just can't have them distracted if you're deployed. So, that creates some challenges as well. And you can't fire them.
Yeah.
So, that's also a thing. You really have no say in who you get, and you can't fire them. But, like I said, I was fortunate. There were very, very few instances where that was a problem.
Well, I think with some, the buy-in at the front end in a military sense is immediate. They know what they're getting themselves into, I would imagine. Some others, I guess, not so immediate. It's going to take some time for the buy-in.
Well, they all volunteered. They all knew. Yeah. And so I joined in 1993. And so we had a good few years before, the global war on terror kicked off. And so I was a drill sergeant. I was the drill sergeant of the year on 9/11. So I was training troops in basic training when that happened.
Yeah.
And the whole thing shifted because you join in peacetime and then suddenly you're at war.
Yeah.
Everything has changed. Mm-hmm. And so in that case, there was that one-off where that's not what they thought they were getting, an easy job. And then it turned out not to be that way.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they know what they're doing. There's a joke about recruiters lying to them and telling them, "Oh no, it's super easy." But that's, for the most part, that's not the truth. Yeah. You had to volunteer, right? I mean, it's not, nobody pretends that it's summer camp.
I can't see, that's the funny thing. You mentioned that you're a grandfather and that you were a drill sergeant at one point.
Yeah.
You're such a, not soft-spoken, but I mean, you're kind of just a gentle man, but I mean, maybe you just kind of got it all out,
So I had a unique, not unique. I would say the more effective drill sergeants didn't yell all the time.
Right.
We had some, when I first became a drill sergeant, I went to the unit and there were these two drill sergeants that just yelled constantly. It was always yelling. I mean, to the point where the other drill sergeants just didn't want to be around them. It's like, come on, guys.
Is it because the movies played up the character?
Movies, yeah.
Really?
And
Arlie Ermy from Full Metal Jacket.
And they didn't, they both had jobs where their role in the military wasn't necessarily a leadership role. It was individual skills.
Right.
And so it was they just felt power and they were yelling all the time. But, after about the first 3 or 4 days, you just tune them out.
Yeah.
Not just me, the recruits tune them out. And, we just found it to be more effective just to be deliberate and serious.
Yeah.
Because if I walked in or my mentor, Jackie Love, walked into the bay and shouted, things happened. Because it just didn't happen often. We're just very serious about it. And then, Jackie Love was kind of my example. He ended up being the sergeant major up at West Point, up at the military academy. But by the end of the 3rd week of basic training, he would have them. He would have his platoon of 60 soldiers to where he didn't have to, we call it smoke them. He didn't have to give them corrective exercise or anything like that. All he had to do was say, "You let the platoon down." And it would crush their soul.
Yeah. That's like a parent saying, I'm disappointed.
Just disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
And if you've got a drill sergeant within 3 weeks that have 60 brand new soldiers to the point where you can crush their soul by saying you have let the platoon down.
Yeah.
That's the way you want to be, and that was kind of what I took as my model. And I just wasn't really now, don't get me wrong, I can get frustrated at things, but yelling all the time is just it's never been my style.
It becomes less effective.
Yeah.
They don't feel like you care. There's that element too. And as a parent, you got to figure that out.
But if you yell all the time and then you really need something done, what do? Yell louder?
Right.
You've given up your ace in the hole.
There's a recent video I saw from Simon Sinek, and he was talking about his experience at a Four Seasons. Okay. And a coffee barista was serving him, and the guy really seemed to enjoy their job. He says, never mind the fact that everyone at a Four Seasons is on point to make sure that the customer, the clients are being taken care of and they feel that way, Okay. But to make the client feel that way, the employee has to feel a certain way as well. So Simon, being a culture guy and how he kind of talks about culture all the time, he asked him, he said, "Hey, you really seem like you love your job." And the person said, "I do. I love my job here." And it was in Vegas. And he said, "Well, tell me why. How do you articulate why you love my job?" He says, "For one reason, and it's because every time I have a manager walk by, they're always looking to make sure I'm okay. Do I need anything? Can I help you with anything? They're always on the lookout for me as if they're working for me." He says, "Now, the funny thing is I actually have another job over at Caesar's Palace." He says, "I can't stand that job." He says, because they're always on me to make sure I'm on point and that I am, doing things the way they want them to and, measuring my, that kind of thing, just constantly on top of them. He says, I can't wait until the day I can just come over here and do this full time. So it's, that kind of thing. Really
think about the difference between being approached by your supervisor and being asked the question, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Or
here it comes again.
Versus, hey, do you need anything? What do you need to be successful?
Yeah.
And I one guy gave me I had a sergeant major that gave me the rule of three. Like I was a first sergeant. And I would go, his old Vietnam vet, and I would go report to him, first sergeant, I did this, when I was a squad leader. And he said, look, I'm going to check up on you 3 times. If 3 different times you've done what I told you to do, I'm going to believe you. If 3 different times you haven't, then you're not going to get me off of you. And, he was pretty faithful to that. I mean, they just trusted us to do our job. But I like that. And I will say I've not always gotten the things that I know are the right thing right. Like this is a learning process. I joke that I'm a really good coach because I'm really good at screwing up. Right. If you're naturally good at things, you're probably not going to be a great coach at that.
Right.
That there's saying that, those who can do and those who can't teach, and it's meant pejoratively. But for me, it really is true. Think about the best athletes in the world. They're really bad coaches.
Right.
As a general rule. The best sports coaches are typically the people who are just good enough that if they work really hard, they can make it to, a higher level, but they're just not natural. They have to work at it. They really have to challenge it because they see different ways to get things done. Yeah. And I just, kind of my saying is I'm not great at anything. I have to work at everything, but that gives me some insight into different ways to do things. And I don't just keep repeating the same thing to people and expecting it to catch on the 5th or 6th time. If I explain it to you or I try and coach you through it and you don't get it, I'm going to try a different way. Yeah. So that it resonates with you or solves whatever issue that you have. It's just, I had a first sergeant that was just a great marksman. Like one of the most important things you do as a drill sergeant is teach people how to shoot. Yeah. And he was just an incredible marksman. Like he'd go down to the rifle range and pull a rifle from one of the soldiers and get down and hit 40 out of 40 time targets from 50 to 300 meters is the way it works. And he would go down there and he'd hit 39 out of 40 with somebody else's rifle just all the time. He was terrible at teaching marksmanship. Right. Because he would just keep repeating the fundamentals of marksmanship over and over and over again. Like, well, clearly the kid hasn't gotten it in the past 3 weeks that we've been beating it in his head. So we probably need to try a different approach here.
Or maybe it's just not their thing.
Sometimes it's not their thing. I mean, if you can't qualify on the rifle, then you just don't.
You're probably in the wrong business.
You don't graduate. Yeah, we get you someplace else. But very rarely does that happen. I mean, it's not that hard to hit 23 out of 40 right time targets if you apply the fundamentals, but it doesn't always. And sometimes it's just people getting out into their own head. Right. One of the tricks that I would use, we'd get out there and these kids would try and shoot and they would just get stuck and they're just all over the map. Typically this is on grouping day. So they go out there with their rifle and they've got to get 5 out of 6 shots, consecutive shots in this 4 centimeter circle. And you got to do that before you start zeroing the weapon. Otherwise you're just chasing the rabbit. If you think about engineering terms, right? The process isn't in control. You never change a process. You're trying to improve a process that's not under control because you're just
creating more chaos.
Yeah, you're creating chaos. And so you're trying to get that process under control. And at a certain point, they're just in their head. Like they're just convinced it'll never happen. So I would grab the rifle and I would move the rear side aperture, which is supposed to move, but they don't know it. So I just, that's the problem. And just wiggle it. I didn't even say what the problem was. And then I would take it to the armorer. There's this armorer truck, this repair truck out there with an old Vietnam vet guy. And I would hand it up to him and he'd say, "What's the problem with the rifle drill?" I'm like, "The shooter." And I would stand there and just chat with him for a few minutes. He'd wipe something off or whatever. He wouldn't do anything to the rifle. And I'd walk back and hand it to the soldier and I'd say, "Okay, he fixed it." And the kid would sit down and most of the time they would be able to do it now. Yeah. Because I've given them something outside themselves as the problem. Yeah. Because the further down the rabbit hole of them being the problem and being screwed up and I'm never going to get it and this isn't for me, the worse their shot groups got. It was just bad. But I gave them something outside themselves. I'm like, "Oh no, that was the problem." Now I never told them that the rifle was broke. I never told them anything. I just, there's the problem.
You gave their confidence a placebo.
That's it. It's the placebo effect. It's 100% that, and I, it worked. So I'll stick with it.
If it would work, it's kind of resetting the mind in a way.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. It's like, okay, if it's not working, go take a walk.
Yep.
Reset your mind, reset your head.
Yep.
I'll do that with video editing, right? I'll sit there or audio editing. I'll work on something for half an hour and I got to get up and walk around.
Yeah.
Just to kind of reset your ears, reset your eyes, and reframe how something looks or whatever. Works every time.
Yeah.
Unless you're really into it and you got a rrhythm going. Or you can't establish a rhythm. Sometimes you just got to do it in sections, which I find myself doing all the time. The funny thing you mentioned about, the good, talented, skilled shooter is similar to a sales organization, right? A lot of sales organizations will have the best sales. Oh, well, you're the best salesperson. Let's make you a manager.
Oh, yeah.
No, bad idea.
Yeah. And it
almost never works.
I mean, you see it in engineering firms, you see it in a bunch of firms. And I have clients that, because we cover, so it's fitness and performance coaching. So the performance coach is kind of a leadership and executive coaching part of it, because it all ties in together. The health is the foundation of it. If you're not healthy and fit, you're not operating at 100%, which means your focus isn't there, your energy isn't there. And but then there's also the other part about stress management and time management, energy management, and all that. And so we kind of cover all that stuff. And my clients are typically executives or business owners, and I talk to them all the time. And when they talk about what's stressing them, it'll be this manager is like, we promoted this guy. He's an engineer and he was great. He was turning projects on time. He was doing all this stuff. And the minute we made him a manager, it was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
Same thing with sales.
It's not their thing.
And I think there ought to be a path, and in a lot of organizations, there's a path to advance in engineering or in sales where you don't necessarily have to take on that management role if it's just not your gig. And it's just not everybody's gig. I mean, it's just a different animal. And, a good manager doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a good salesperson. Mm-hmm. Or a good leader doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be a good salesperson. You got to put, one of my sayings that probably makes no sense is, round peg, round hole, square peg, square hole. Like it's a mantra. Anybody who's worked for me as a direct report knows that saying, because when they come and complain about this person, I'm like, square peg, square hole, round peg, round hole. I mean, are you fitting the peg in the right hole? And let's move around, because what happens, we try and put a square peg in a round hole, and they don't function or they don't perform at the level that we expect them to perform. And then we're just ready to cut them loose from the organization. Like, well, were they doing well before you put them in that position?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, they're really good at this. Why would we get rid of them completely?
Yeah.
We've promoted them or moved them to a place where they don't need to be. So let's put the square peg in the square hole and put the round peg in the round hole.
In some of the business coaching scenarios that you've been put in, what is one thing that kind of comes to mind where you immediately saw the obvious problems? You were just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a walk in the park. I guess I walk in here and I could feel it. Has there been a scenario like that where you just know? I mean, for example, I came out of the radio business in 2013, and it was a well-run company that I worked for. Really good culture. You felt like you were cared for. The president of the company worked in the same building. Open door policy. You can go in. He was a drummer. I was a drummer. We were like friends, right? So that helped the culture. Whether people knew it or not back then is another story. But I look back on it and I go, that was a good culture. I went into a place that you could feel the tension. Like people were. It was a culture of fear. Yeah. And the first week there, the guy must have fired 6 people.
Yeah.
In various locations in the company. Yeah. And, I told my wife, okay, it was a much better paycheck for us and everything. I said, just put the money away. I don't know how long this is going to last. And, in a similar event, from there, I went into the car business selling Honda. The general manager that I worked for was a friend of mine because we did a lot of work in radio. And he ended up retiring from the business. So we went from a culture of him knowing everybody's name and everybody really liking him and all this other stuff to the guy who took over. The difference was palpable. Yeah. It was it was borderline tactile, right? Yeah. Night and day. Where people just started dropping like flies. standards weren't really being held up, eventually allowed people to start wearing jeans to work, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The formality went out the window.
Yeah.
And it was just,
I don't know that any place needs to be formal. It just depends on the job. But what matters is if you set the standard, it's got to be the standard.
Right.
Right. So the lowest that you'll accept is the standard.
Yeah.
Any standard that you let somebody violate is now the new standard. Whatever they were doing, that's now the new standard. And, I would say that the one organization that I feel like I didn't do well enough at was also the one when I walked in, I knew the easy. That was oh my God, this would be easy.
Yeah.
This is what we need to do. Because I don't really do business coaching, but my conversations with my clients, the performance and executive coaching piece of it always turns into what's going on in their business. Right. So I'm not going to sit down and discuss strategy with them. I'm not going to help them found a startup or anything like that. That's not my groove. That's not where I provide unique value. But when I took over the health club that we were talking about, when they were recruiting me, they found me. And when they were recruiting me, the conversations that we were having, the culture that they had, the way that their marketing was being done, the competitor that was opening up down the street, it was very easy to see how we turned it around, how we should turn it around, reposition it, start putting a focus on the current members, and then restore the feeling of the team that they were a valuable team. Because everything was about, the customer is always right is a bit of a misnomer, right?
That's a phrase that people use, like what we another phrase from the beginning.
That's another one, right? Yeah. So if the customer's being a jerk, they're not right. It's just maybe factually they're correct, but if they're being a jerk or they're abusing the teenager that's working at the front desk because that teenager happens to work at a health club and you happen to run a company, you're just a jerk and it's not okay.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was the easiest thing. The trouble was, I just couldn't. I said all that during the recruiting process, and it was a big thumbs up. And like, yeah, let's do that. But then when I took over, it just was roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. It was like, let's keep doing the same things we were doing, just do it better.
Right.
Well, that wasn't,
amplify the bad decisions.
Yeah, I was like, well, that wasn't working. And then the reason I think that that is my failure, because I got so wrapped up in trying to change the culture of the bigger organization,
which was where it has to come from.
Well, maybe yes. But I didn't. I got so wrapped up in that because I didn't want the club to close. I didn't want it to fail. But those were decisions beyond my purview that needed to be done, that I didn't put the effort that I could have, just accept that I couldn't change that, and put the effort that I could have into making the culture there for my employees, for my team, as good as it could be. Just accepting that's what I have control over. I had some good managers that were doing that. But my focus was so much on, I don't want this thing to close, and I need them to see, I had data, I had other stuff, and I need them to see it, that I let the standard, I let the culture of my team slip.
Yeah.
To where, at the end, it probably just wasn't a fun place it wasn't a fun place for me to work. I enjoyed the people there, but it wasn't fun for me because I had to talk to the people above me all the time, and it was just like banging my head against the wall.
Well, it's,
and that was not cool. What I could have just done is said, hey, they run the company, they own the company, it's their company. What I can do is make sure that my team feels valued and protected.
Yeah.
And focus on making their lives as good as I can. And I didn't do enough of that. And so that's, to me, the fact that it closed after I left doesn't make it my failure, but,
I get
the fact that
saying.
I didn't protect my team, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the culture piece comes from, right? You can have the culture at different levels.
Yeah.
Climate is kind of, what does it feel like when you come into work every day? What's that feel like? That's kind of a bottom up thing. Culture is a top down thing, right? It's
total top down.
Yeah. What kind of expectations am I setting? And you mentioned the standard slipping. That's one of the things. Letting people who aren't meeting the standard continue in that position hurts the morale and motivation and trust of everybody else who's doing their job.
It totally does.
And when you take your eye off the ball and you're looking up instead of looking at what you can controlling what you can control, that happens. And that typically did not happen in my organizations, and that was one event one instance where it did happen.
Yeah.
And there are people that just shouldn't have been there anymore, and I didn't change them out or do anything like that.
So in your micro scenario, you were trying to make the best of it and create a culture in that micro environment, that ecosystem, as best as it could be, and shield them from whatever you were dealing with, right? And then but in the macro, it was just they just didn't want to shift and change.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, is that something you could pick up on though when you did the interview? Did you have any idea that what
No, I mean I'll tell you the shift, and this isn't me shifting blame. Like I took the job, right? But the person that interviewed me had been with the company for 26 years. And the one that was telling me the reason he wanted me to do it was he knew that they needed to change, right? They were still operating on 1985, just sell mindset. And because, I had all this organizational experience, I had, I'd done the executive MBA program at Auburn, I'd run a manufacturing facility, and I had 30 years, I became a master fitness trainer in 1997. So I had lots of experience doing this. And I seemed like the perfect fit to him. And he goes, you're perfect. You have all these contacts in the fitness industry as well. I think you can bring the change that we need.
Yeah.
I think 5 months, maybe 6 months into my tenure there, he left the company completely. He just got fed up with it and said, I'm out.
Oh, so your buffer, your champion left.
That's right. And we weren't able to achieve very much in the meantime either.
Right.
It just, because the people above him, we were just beating our head against the.
There's an element. I mean, there's a buddy of mine, again, going back to the car business, because I mean, you have it's an interesting study on culture in that business because generally they're not good cultures. Yeah. Occasionally you come across a really good culture. A buddy of mine, he was shopping around for Jeeps in Connecticut, and I think he had to get one of his serviced or something like that. And he says, I asked for a loaner car, and their loaner car program is just nothing to write home about. And he says, it was like she didn't even care. And I said, that's just to me at least, a major sign of a bad culture, because why should your frontline employees care if you guys don't? If your managers don't care, if the ownership doesn't care, if the C-level executives don't care, that comes down. That really does, fall down the chute, and so to speak.
It's your department, it's your company, it's you're the one setting the tone there. And if you're not interested in it, if you're not invested in it, then there's no reason for them to be. And again, I felt really bad about that because it was a really good team there, and I thought the people there were really good. And it was just a shame the way that happened. But you were talking about when people would come down from the home office, which was in the Midwest, the tension was just there. Like they were there to catch you.
Yeah.
At something.
Mom and dad are here.
Yeah. They were there to catch you at something. In the end, and the person that was before me, I think she was doing a good job considering because she had the same stuff to work with I had.
Yeah.
I was just brought in with the idea that we were going to make some changes, and we just didn't. And so I think it just soured a whole bunch of people that.
What do you do in a position like that? Do you actually address it with the higher ups and saying, no, it's not me, it's you? That's what I did. Did you? And they didn't like that, I guess.
No, well, I will tell you that the one weakness I have is that not the one weakness. I have lots of weaknesses, don't get me wrong. But the one that stands out the most when I'm in an organization is managing up. I will do my very best. And if I think that I have a good idea, if I think that what I'm giving you the evidence for and the rationale for and all that stuff will work, and you tell me no, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I would appreciate that you give me the same level of rationale and evidence and all that for why this isn't going to work or why it's not a good idea. Yeah. Just the answer no. Like, okay, what we're doing currently is not working.
Yeah. Here's an idea.
Here's evidence from, a benchmark or from this and that. And here's the numbers. I've run the data. I've got all this stuff. So we can try this. Here's the fallout if it doesn't work, et cetera. To get just the answer no.
Yeah.
Like, so no would be cool. No.
Why?
Or no, but we're going to do this instead. But no, we're going to keep doing what we're doing that's clearly not working. It's probably a failure of mine, my personality, but it wears on me very quickly.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I'm just going to tell you, it's like, look, what we're doing is not working.
Yeah.
And that's you. That's not me.
Well, if you have the evidence going into it saying, hey, I gave you this, I gave you that, I brought all these things to the table.
Yeah.
You don't want to do any of them. So, I don't know what you want me to do. Tell me what you want me to do.
I mean, I got spoiled because in the military, I didn't get that. Like I'm talking to people who have, my commander, my boss has absolute legal authority over my life. I mean, there's no reason that he or she needs to give me a reason for their command.
Yeah.
Because they're just the absolute boss, right? But they do. When you're in, when all the commanders the company commanders are in there with the battalion commander and you're talking about different options and all that stuff, and you give it your all. And when the commander makes a decision, she'll tell you, or he'll tell you, this is why this is the best option for us.
Right. I'm treating you like a participant, not an idiot.
Yeah. You're like, okay, hey, I got you. Even if I don't agree with you now, I understand. I've been given the opportunity to understand why you said it, and you are the boss. And then, you click your heels, you face about, and then when you go out and you talk to your troops, it's your decision.
Yeah.
It's not, well, the boss said we got to do this. This is what we're doing. This is my command that we're doing this now. And you take ownership of that. And you're willing to do that because you got the feedback. You got the rationale. And, what I used to tell the leaders I was developing is that if you tell people why, when you have the opportunity, then they'll trust you when you don't have the time.
Yeah.
It's
credibility.
Even if it takes credibility, if it takes a few minutes of your time, and everybody's busy. Yeah. But it takes a little while to lay out why you're making this decision that maybe they don't agree with. Or even if they do agree with, why you're making this decision, why you're giving them this directive to do. That builds trust.
Yeah.
And then when there's a crisis or there's an emergency or there really isn't time to say why.
Did you ask them that though when they said no? Did you say why?
Oh yeah.
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 And they were like, just because? Because I said so?
Well, here's the thing. Here I found out why. I found out why later. So I was there for 16 months.
Right.
2 months after I left, they closed that location. And I think a month and a half after that, all 8 of the other locations, the sale closed on selling all of them.
Wow.
Now, when you're talking, each location's running between $2 and $6 million in revenue a year or more, that sale had been pending since I got hired.
Oh, really? So they didn't care. They had one foot out the door.
Yeah. I mean, the due diligence takes that long. It at least, so in the
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't you.
But they weren't treating us like grown-ups. I mean, they could have told me that, and I'd have closed it out for them.
Yeah, but when you're at that level and you're in a sale, people keep stuff close to the vest and all that stuff.
Yeah. I was a general manager, though.
I get it.
At what level of trust do you have to be?
That's the culture, though.
Yeah.
That's probably why they went out of business.
And that's actually a phrase I used to tell them, like, look, you can tell me anything. I had a TS clearance, Yeah. I'm good with a secret. I can handle this. They sold it out, and they got out just in time, I'll be honest, because, COVID hit after that. But
that's true.
But I found out why. But it was a frustrating experience. I think there's a lot of really good people that worked there that didn't get.
But here's the way to look at that.
Due.
A lot of people they got to experience things like that so they can appreciate the good companies, and they know what they know what they don't like. They know what not to look for, and they know what to gravitate towards, because we've all worked for companies like that that are just bad fits, bad cultures. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah, and I'm not beating up on it. It made me better because now I realized that what could I have done? I had no control over that.
Yeah.
But I kept beating my head against that wall instead of just saying, and I think I could have done that, but I could have put more effort into the team that I ran and the culture that they had.
Yeah.
That I was helping them create and set them up for success. And I'm not saying I didn't do it at all, but I didn't do enough.
You did the best you could, but also you also made an indelible impression on those people, and they probably remember you fondly as somebody they enjoyed working for.
I sure hope so.
Look at it that way. But with that being said, we got to do the. I don't know why that's cut off, but okay. I got the new Rodecaster Pro 2 here, which is working through its kinks, I guess. But we'll work with it. So with that being said, it is that time. What is your problem? What are some of the things you're contending with?
Yeah. We talked about it a little bit in there. There's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
That's a long and distinguished list of problems. So the one I'm facing right now, when I went out on my own, I was trying to find out where can I add unique value to the marketplace, and it was kind of this combination. One of the problems is describing what it is that I do, because it's fitness and performance, right? So a performance coach is talking about your personal development as a leader and an executive, and I do that, but it's always on a foundation of fitness, because honestly, we keep putting, a lot of very busy, successful people put their fitness off because they feel like they'll get to it later. But when is later? And the longer you put it off, the shorter later is. Yeah. And you're just not operating at peak efficiency or peak performance if you're not healthy. So that will always be kind of at the basis of it. And so kind of describing that is sometimes a challenge. But now I'm at that phase where I've developed my own way of doing these things. I have my own methodology, my own program, and I have individual clients. And starting a business in that scenario was really easy because it's just me coaching, right? I just find a coach. I have a platform. I have these things. But now I'm getting into some corporate wellness consulting and some resilience team building stuff. And that is going to require a team. It's going to require a company. It's going to require an organization that I don't have. And like we were saying, I've got a lot of experience and I've got ratings and other people telling me that I'm pretty good at running other people's organizations, but I'm not a startup guy. Yeah. It's not my gig. I've never done it. I've never started it from scratch and built out at scale where I've got teams working with this corporation, teams working with this corporation, team working with this corporation to help implement their strategy. I've done some consulting with companies and given them a blueprint. Hey, here's what you can do. But they inevitably want some help implementing it, and I don't have the team to do that. Right. So now I'm looking at kind of a call it a rebrand, but really it's creating an organization versus just Donovan Manley coaching, right?
Well, the mountain is being climbed right now, and the beginning of your business was just taking the first few steps to begin the climb. Keep it simple, stupid kind of, or keep it simply. Surprisingly simple. I like that one.
Oh, is that that's a nice way to say it?
Saying. I heard it put that way. Yeah. I was like, I like that one.
You wouldn't be the first person to call me stupid. So okay.
No, I'm not calling you stupid.
So I kind of took the lean startup approach with the coaching, right? So I just iterated. What about this? What about this? And that's how it went from, using precision nutrition, because I've been a precision nutrition coach for many years, and using kind of their methodology and all that stuff, and to where it's me doing my own thing, right? Yeah. And I didn't want to scale or build any kind of a company or organization until I knew what that was. And so it's been a lot of iterations, and that part was just kind of simple. But now I'm at that inflection point where I either need to build an organization to branch out, or I just keep trading time for money. I mean, that's really where it's at.
Well, I mean, you have a job that owns you. You own a job at that
which point. I enjoy doing. I love talking to clients. Coaching is just my thing. Yeah. So in a dream world, my dream scenario is I have an organization. I can go in and do the consultation with a company. I have a team that can help implement it. I have coaches and fitness trainers that can go in there and do the things. And then I'm just going around doing workshops and seminars. And because I love teaching from a stage. I love, it's just I like impacting and helping people improve. And from a stage, you can just do it at a much wider, a much larger scale. And so I'm doing that, and that brings in the interest for the company, and then that feeds into the consultation, that feeds into putting teams out there. I mean, that's kind of my dream life, if you will, because it gives me the flexibility to be with my grandkids.
Just be careful that you don't do the Ramsey effect, Yeah, which is getting your name on it. So then all of a sudden you can't step away at all because it's got your name on it.
Yeah, everybody. Well, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to change the name of, when I start the company, it'll have a different name, right? Because right now I just operate under Donovan Manley Coaching, because why not? But I know a lot of people that have done that, and then everybody that comes in want to be coached by Donovan Manley. It's like, well, it's Donovan Manley Coaching. Why am I not Donovan? And
I mean, you look at the fitness guys in the past, Jack LaLanne. Yeah, he had his methodologies, and I guess some of the equipment that he put out there. I mean, they wanted the methodologies that he did. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger can't train everybody, but they wanted to do the style of training that he did. So I mean, it's similar in that. I mean, you got the celebrity factor of it, possibly. And also, getting into
that's
a business.
a mountain further down the road, being a celebrity.
That's totally doable. The getting into a business like what you're talking about, also being inside of your own bottle. You can't read. It's tough to read the label.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something earlier, being able to describe what you do the best way. And actually, I think B&I helps that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Because you really have to kind of refine and simplify what it is you do. If you can do it in 5 or 6 words, man, you're way ahead of the game. It's not just fitness, but you talked about a style of fitness. One thing that stuck out to me is helping people like me. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just don't want to. I like walking, but an active fitness regimen and routine, it's the last thing I want to do. Yeah. I've got too many other things I have to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I try to eat as best as I can.
Sure.
I try to move as much as I possibly can. Maybe that's the thing. That's the angle. Okay, if you're in this mindset, the small baby steps you can do are these. And
that's exactly what I do. And so the way it works is there's kind of 3 phases. There's clarity, there's consistency, and then there's capacity. Right. So you have to gain absolute clarity on who you are as a self-image and as a real person, what your values are, what's important to you, and what your vision of the future is, your current state and your future state. Because you can't. Folks will design goals that aren't really their goals. They're goals that they think they should have, right? And so if you think that your goal should be to work out 3 times a week or be able to deadlift 500 pounds, if that's not important to you and it doesn't fit into what your life is, you're not going to stick to it. So you gain that clarity. And then the next step is consistency. Mm-hmm. And consistency can be as simple as I'm going to stand up every hour. If you're a person who is at the desk all day long, you stand up every hour, that's a change. Right, that's increasing it. Now it could be more than that. It could be less than that. Depends on your life.
I got to do more of this. I gotta stand more.
You got to stand at desk. Yeah, that's it.
And it's and I got a podcast studio that the cameras will match my angle, but you're actually getting lower because the camera's attached to the desk. Yeah. But I can stand up, and I need to do this more.
Yeah. So even like a 15-45, right?
Yeah.
So if you stand up for 15 minutes, sit down for 45 minutes, something like that. That's more than you're doing now.
Yeah.
But once that is ingrained in your life, then you can start increasing your capacity.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to jump straight to capacity. Everybody wants to work out 5 times a week. They want to do the named diet and be 100% strict on it. And that's great. You're going to do it. But unless you can tie each one of those actions directly to how it's helping you live your values or how it's helping you achieve that perfect vision of the future, it's not going to stick with you. And that has to be a deliberate, it can't just be this wishy-washy, if I'm fit, then I will be able to live longer, and that's going to help me live.
Or just appreciating the fact that it's going to take some time. Like, for example, I just had an idea pop into my head. Maybe this will be a fitness concept of mine, that maybe we can run with. Making the small decisions, right? Instead of getting the chips with
small
lunch.
Decisions TM.
Yeah, small decisions, instead of getting chips with lunch, get the fruit cup. Yeah. We've got a long driveway down here to the mailbox. And I'm like, there's no reason why I can't walk down to the mailbox, get the mail and bring it back. The other day I pull up to B&I. We both have a B&I at the same place, the Elks Lodge. Yeah. And I always park, because I'm early, I park at the front of the parking spot next to the building. Yeah. And I said, you know what? There's no reason why I can't park at the back and just walk in. Yeah. And somebody even noticed that I did that. They're like, oh, what are you doing? Getting exercise? I said, yeah, I am. It's a small decision. I'm like, who knows? Maybe if I keep on doing this in 6 months, I'll look entirely different.
It is. So you think about, in order to live my vision, what skills do I need?
Yeah.
Right? What skill do I need? And then once you determine what that skill is, so the skill might be make healthier decisions, make small, healthier decisions. And then you have to figure out, what am I going to practice? What's one small action that I'm going to take every day that's going to help me build that skill?
Yeah.
And then once that's ingrained, you add another one, then you add another one. And it's just something small like that.
Yeah.
And, what is that practice that I'm going to do every day? Because you talk about the goals, right? So there's outcome-based goals. I want to lose X amount of weight. I want to lift how much this. I want to increase revenue by 20%.
Right.
Those are outcome-based goals. What are the actions that are more likely than not to lead to that outcome? Those are behavior-based goals. Those are those practices that you do every day. Well, you have very little control of the outcome. All you can do to achieve the outcome is take the actions, the behaviors that are more likely than not to lead to that outcome. And that becomes an experiment, right? I want to increase revenue by 20%. In order to do that, I think I need to do these actions every day, every week, every month. And you do those for a while, and then you check you do the analysis, you check your data, and it's like, did that lead to the result that I expected?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And if it's no, it's like, okay, why not? Did I actually do what I said I was going to do? That's an important part. If I did and I didn't get the result that I expected, analyze that, come up with a new action that you think is going to lead to it. Life's an experiment, man. And
it really is.
You just treat it with the scientific method like that. Organizations are the same way. I mean, and so that's what we try and do. You think about continuous improvement. When I was doing the Lean Six Sigma Green Belt program, and then lean manufacturing and lean management professional stuff, all that just tied directly into what the Army does, right? So we run things on iterations. Do it, stop it, analyze it, do it again. Stop it, analyze it. And when you analyze it, when the Army does an AAR, it's what was the plan? What did we expect to happen?
Yeah.
What was the plan, or what did we expect to happen? What did we actually do? What was the result that we got from it? And then what can we improve? Like, what was the difference between the result that we got and what we thought we were going to get?
Right.
And then what we can improve next time. And that's the same thing that we're just talking about there. And so that's kind of the methodology that I use, right? It's all based to, we're going to start at the clarity on who you are, what you want, and get down to specific actions that you can take on a regular basis.
I just want to drop 40 pounds, man.
Yeah.
And that's, it's not that hard to do when you really think about it. But it can be. It can be,
depending on your life. But no, it's a perfectly achievable goal for you. But I think, again, then you start getting into the discussion. Why 40? Why is 40 the number?
Because it'll put me right, I think, at the weight where I need to be. I'd look good at that weight.
Right.
Right now, I look like a slob.
So we would throw, we would dig into that, right? We would do the 5 whys of why that's important to you and get down to the root of it. But in the end, we would throw 40 pounds up there as the outcome goal.
Yeah.
And we would determine what are the steps that you can take within the context of your busy life that are more likely than not to get you there. Now, before we do all that, we would, the way I do it, we would certainly get into, your values and your vision and all that to make sure that we're doing things that align with that, right? Because your goals have to align with that. But then we would just start working. Now, there's a very good chance that you might get to 30 pounds and all of the whys that 40 pounds were important. The why was that important? What it made you feel, what it allowed you to do, the self-impression that it gave you, or the self-image that it allowed you to have. Once you get to 30 pounds, you've achieved all of those things.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So that 40 pounds is that's not the magic, right? It's why 40 is important to you. What you expect how you expect to live, and what you're allowed to do, and how you expect to feel when you lose those 40 pounds. That's the magic. That's the real vision, right? How do you interact with the world when you've lost that 40 pounds?
Yeah.
How do you interact with yourself when you've lost that 40 pounds? And so 40, is a good number. I mean, that could be 100%. That could be the right answer.
Yeah.
But if we dig down and find out what that vision is, there's a very good chance you get to 30 and you've already achieved it. And now we move on to something else. Now you want to deadlift 2 times body weight. I don't know. Now you want to climb Kilimanjaro. I don't know.
It's funny because I have no interest in doing it.
Me either. I'm just not. There was a time I could deadlift 2x, but I've had my spine and my knee rebuilt, and it's just not. I could do it again. I mean, that's not an excuse. I don't have any interest in that right now.
I got down to the point when I was 25 years old. I lost a ton of weight, saw my abs, and that was my goal. Yeah. Tried to keep up with the regimen, but it was just overwhelming.
Yeah.
We moved to Vegas, and
I've had my time of peak physical conditioning, and then. So PT in the early days in the 82nd and 173rd, our physical fitness was just a meat grinder, man.
Yeah.
If you made it, you made it. If you didn't, you got shipped out. It was just one of those things. And, I just knew there was a smarter way and studied it and learned it. And now I want to be able to be the active grandfather. And I am fortunate. My family has a history of longevity, and obviously that's not guaranteed to me, but, I was adopted by my father's side, so I don't really know my father's side. My mother's side, there's a long, the folks live a long time.
Yeah.
And I want that quality of life if I achieve what my mother's side does, I want that quality of life to be good. That's why I do what I do. I mean, I'm a 100% disabled vet, right? So I've had all these surgeries. I've had all these things broken. Physiologically, I am in great great shape. My heart is good. My lungs are good, all that stuff. Orthopedically, I'm a wreck, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm an orthopedic case study, but I can still do all the things because that's my reason for doing this. That's what gets me in there. I'm not a gym rat. It's not my passion.
Yeah.
It's a thing that I do because of what it allows me to do and how it allows me to live. At first it allowed me to be a paratrooper without dying, which was a cool thing.
Yeah.
And then after that, it just continued, and I've adjusted the why as we go, talking about Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
I've adjusted the why as I've gone. And now my why is that I want the greatest quality of life that I can for as long as I can. And that gets me in the gym every day, and it makes me work on myself, stress reduction, sleep improvement. Yeah. I'll tell you, I thought I was doing pretty good, and then I got an Apple Watch and realized that maybe my sleep quality is not as good as I thought. So
I need to learn how to use this thing. It says you've closed your rings. I don't even know what that means.
I don't know if it's accurate. I wear it when I sleep, and I wake up, and it says, sleep quality was mediocre. I'm like, really? I feel pretty good.
I had one thing, a sleep app that it's odd to never hear yourself snore. But on these sleep apps, I looked at it one day, and I use it mainly for my alarm. So I look into it one day, and it says, "Oh, here's where you started snoring." I'm going, "Oh, here's the recording of the really okay." Oh, wow. I wonder what I sound like when I snore, and I sound like my dad.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah,
but and since I've been on a CPAP, I don't snore anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, is that working for you? So you tolerate the mask pretty well?
Oh, I have the nose pillows, nasal pillows, I guess what they call them. So it's not really a mask.
But that works well for you?
It works for me.
About a 50% tolerance rate on those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine for me. I've actually, if I'm without it, I notice the difference. I have a little bit of a sore throat when I wake up because I snore. Yeah. And then at the end, when I get back on it, it feels better. Yeah. So cool, man. And, with the sleep apnea and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad that's working for you. That's good.
I mean, if I drop the weight, who knows? Maybe it'll go. I don't know why I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Might as well keep on doing it.
Absolutely.
Supposedly healthy. I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of things tied to sleep apnea and a lot of consequences. So the fact that you're able to control it is a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing.
So how can people find and follow you?
Man, right now I am Donovan Manley everywhere. Like if you Google Donovan Manley, you go to any of the social medias. Now some of them are placeholders. Yeah, like I have the Donovan Manley at Donovan Manley on TikTok. I go to TikTok and watch the videos that Missy sends me that she thinks are funny or that my kids send, but I don't post anything there. But everywhere you want to look, it's there. I mean, I think even when it becomes Stalwart Performance, it will still be at donovanmanley.com. Everything will still be there because
it's such a unique name.
Yeah. Used to be the only one. There's another one somewhere in America now.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now you got to come up with the real Donovan Manley.
Well, I mean, I think he's like 20 years old. So I think I own all the URLs at this point. So
there you go. Go check him out and find him and follow him, Mr. Donovan Manley. Thanks for being a part of the show. And of course, follow along with us. What'sYourProblemPodcast.com. Check, it's on the JMVO, Jim McCarthy Voiceovers.com website. So it's I guess a subsidiary or a sub-page or whatever you want to call it. But it's right there. You can check out all my stuff. What'sYourProblemPodcast.com. Follow along. Give us a like and a subscribe. Send me some email and let me know what I'm doing wrong and all that fun stuff. You can watch this. It is on YouTube and Facebook. But of course, if you want to listen to it, all your links are there as well. Everything you need. Pick your poison. What'sYourProblemPodcast.com. Once again, Mr. Donovan, thank you for coming out here all the way out to Alabama. And we're glad to have you on. It's been way too long, and it's always good to reconnect with you, sir.
Yeah, this is fun. I always enjoy talking to you, Jim.